Hello everyone, my name is Max in VDW, and in this episode I will be teaching you how to create API AI questions for the QAPlugin API. So last episode we created local questions, and in this episode we are going to use API AI questions. Now what's the difference? Well, the most obvious difference is that API AI questions are uploaded. They're not local like the name says, local questions. They're not local. Um, and it uses the server power, well, the server logic and power from Google to detect your questions and try to match them with the correct question that is actually being asked. Um, but the cool thing about it is that it can extract specific parameters in your question or specific variables in your question. So you can ask, for example, who is the US president? And it will see how you need to know US president. Or if you say how to make gold sort, it will detect, oh, you want recipe for gold sort. So those are just a few of the possible examples. Um, I do advise you to look at all the different modules that I have available because there are a lot of modules available uh, with the code being open source that you can use to learn or check. Now, there is documentation of API AI available, and if you know how it works, you know how to create API AI questions inside the QAPlugin API. So basically, there are entities, intents, actions, and context. So intents are your question that you ask. If you An intent can have multiple templates of possible question templates that can be asked. For example, with the joke thing, it would be tell a joke, make a joke, tell us a joke, and it will use machine learning to detect combinations of those specific templates you created. It also has a response that can either be a text response and it will trigger a specific action. When you create an API question, the question is uploaded to API and it will return whatever action it is linked to and trigger the action inside your module code. Entities are the thing you are talking about. Um, it's a bit hard to explain, so I'm just going to give an example. If you have groups, permission groups, you have moderator, administrator, VIP, and member, then those specific words are entities. Well, it's one entity of group. It's a group entity. So if you ask how many moderators are here, you're actually asking how many parameter group are here. And it will check inside those entities if it can find a match for whatever you asked for in the question. Now, context are also the thing you're talking about, but it's a context of what you're talking about. So if you, for example, in real life, you're looking at someone's shoes and you say, "What are those?" Then that person knows, "Hey, you're talking about my shoes," because you're looking at it. So context is basically giving more information than just the text or just the question. If a player is at a specific location and he asks, "Where am I?" then or "What is this?" it will use the location to say, yeah, you are in, for example, the market. So those are contexts. There are actually additional data to your question. Um, and you can use this, for example, if you ask a question, who is the US president? We'll return it's Donald Trump. And then it will, and if you ask another question, how tall is he? It will still know you're talking about Donald Trump. That's just a quick example. The documentation online explains this with examples. So the API allows you to manually, well, manually create the intents and entities and upload them. So QAPlugin will upload them for you. And you can also add contexts inside the API. For this tutorial, I'm going to be modifying the module we created last time. It's still the same. The only thing I changed is that I updated the QAPlugin dependency to a new version. But there aren't any changes in the previous modules that we created in the previous episode, so you'll be fine. So I'm going to delete this and remove those unused imports, and I'm going to start fresh. But my module will still be about jokes. Now the first thing you should do is override a few methods. So if you go to generate and override, you will see that there are a few methods you can override. The constructors are deprecated because you have to use the annotations, but there are still modules using those. That's why they are still available. There are four things you can override. One is the onEnable, and well, it's basically the same as with a plugin. It's called whenever the module is enabled. The onDisabled is called, well, whenever the module is being disabled or unloaded. You can use this, for example, if you have like data storage, you can use this onDisable to save it before the module is removed. And the get context and get response. Now, these are the important things. So we're going to be using the get response and onEnable now. I will explain the get context later. The get response will be called whenever an API question is linked to this module. So as I said before, the linking is done with actions. And you can actually see this inside. This is the intent for the recipe. And you can actually see it that it will return action recipe. So when you ask a question, I'm going to try it in the sidebar here, how to create a beacon. It will say, oh, it is for this intent, and the response is this recipe. This is also a good example of how to see how the parameters work. So it will extract the parameters from the question, from the template, to give, well, a readable, logical name to the item that I set. For example, I say how to create a C table, which is a crafting table. It won't detect it. Well, maybe C table was a bit too hard. How to create workbench, for example, or how to create a crafting table. So crafting table and workbench all result in workbench, which is the material name for, well, a crafting table or workbench. So the action is important. It will always use the module name as the action name, but if, for example, you have like a fancy name like jokes plus plus, you can change the action name by adding an annotation called module action name, and this will override the jokes plus plus as the action name. So yeah, let's create our intent first. So intent question is new intent. Oh, intent. Yes. And as argument, it needs the intent name. In this example, the name is QAPlugin module recipe. So for this, I'm going to be using QAPlugin module joke. Module joke of jokes. Next, as I said, the templates. For now, I'm not going to add arguments to or parameters to our template, so we're just going to use fill phrases like like I showed you for in the beginning of the local question. So we're going to add a whole bunch of possible text, well, possible questions that can be related to a joke. So tell a joke, add template, make a joke, add template, do a joke. Okay, that's enough. Next, we need a response. So we're going to make a new intent response um, with action. So a response returns a text response. It returns possible parameters. It returns, well, if it affected context, the response will affect context. But for now, we're just going to say that it will trigger this action, this. Close it. Okay. So what this will do when a variation of tell a joke, make a joke, or do a joke is asked, it will trigger the get response method of this module because it will trigger this action with. This is a very important line. The with action this is very important. So yeah, it will call this. And for now, I'm just going to do something simple. I'm just going to say this is a joke. But now, as you can see, the question isn't registered or uploaded yet. So to do this, you can use QAPlugin API dot upload intent, and it takes the intent object like this. It's So it throws a feature not enabled well exception whenever there is no developer access token configured. So well, in order to use these types of questions, the config file needs to contain the client access token and the developer access token to well upload and use the questions. So always make sure that you catch this exception. And what this will do now, so well, actually, I'm not going to put the code over here. I'm going to put them in the unenable. It doesn't really matter, but if it's just a habit. So if, for example, you're going to be using, if you're going to be using plugins or something in here, calling to the specific dependencies, it's best to do it in the unenable because else it will throw an error. So always upload your questions in the unenable. So as I said, so it will well load the module. It will create this question. It will upload the question. If the question is already on the side, it will override it. And whenever you ask a question, tell a joke, or make a joke, or a variation of it, it will call this get response method and return whatever it returns. So like in the previous episode, we had like a contact to an API, so you could do something like that. The AI question event contains some useful data. So for example, it contains the default response of the intent. It contains the player that asked the question. It contains, well, there are multiple text responses possible, so you can ask for them. It's extremely useful for error reporting and things. The parameters, so like I said, if you ask like a recipe or something, it will be well a key value pair. What else? Well, the original question that was asked, so get question, and that's basically it. And with those things, you can do quite a lot. So the first thing I'm going to do is, because I already have the humor API, so if I do something like tell a joke, it will link to another intent, or make a joke. Okay, I think I removed this. Okay, so that's good. So that means that we don't have to worry about that. So yeah, we're going to compile this and then we're going to start our server with this. So upon starting the server, my server PC is crashing. Okay. Now if I'm going to check my API intents, you will see that there is an intent edit QAPlugin module jokes. So these are like the three templates you made, and it returns the jokes action. So if I ask tell us a joke, which isn't a question that we configured, but we'll still detect it. So we'll still detect it as the same, similar to tell a joke. And that's the machine learning part that's doing its job. So it's like creating different variants of those three things to detect it. So if we go in game and we ask bot tells a joke, it will always return this is a joke. You'll notice there's a slightly bit of delay on it, and that's because the question is uploaded, then parsed, and then returned. And if you have debugging enabled if you have debugging enabled in the console, you will see that it will say sending question to API, tell a joke. This is the session ID. It's specific for player. If you have contexts that are sent, they will come here. And these are the output context parameter messages. But in this case, well, we don't have any output text or output parameters. So this is all empty. But yeah, it basically works. It uploads the question, it parses the question, so that works. Now we're going to make this a bit more advanced. So what we're going to do is we're going to be adding a parameter and also a bit better response. So last thing, well, in the previous episode, we used the Chuck Norris API, and I found out that it can take the first name and last name as well as parameters to create a joke. Instead of Chuck Norris, it will use, well, whatever first name and last name you give to it. Now, to do this in API, we need to detect our first name and last name. And if the user did not provide the first name and last name, we're going to ask for it. So yeah, searching for my correct tab here. So yeah, there are we're going to be using system entities. Now, if we go to the documentation about entities, I'm going to close this. There will be a section about system entities. System entities are basically entities that are already created for you. So like, for example, at sysdate, we'll try to match a date. So January 1st, 2015 will be matched, or something similar to that. The 1st of January of 2015 will be matched. So these are the entities, and there are a few available. And one of them is given name and last name. I think it's unit names. No, it's not unit names. Yeah, names. Given name and last name. And we'll try to match, well, the list contains 2,500 names according to the SSA popular names list. So it will not be as perfect as possible, but it should contain most names, well, most cool names that we can make a joke about. So, well, let's start by changing this. So what I did here, when I created a template, I immediately used a string for my question. Now, if you're going to be using parameters in your question, you will actually need to create a new template part. Intent template, sorry. And every intent template consists of specific parts. And if you're familiar with the Fanciful or fancy chat thing library, it's basically the same. So if you know the hover text thing in Minecraft chat, it's also with specific parts. You have a part that doesn't contain any hover or click action. Then you have a part that contains a click action. Then you have a part that contains a hover action. The same is with the template parts. So we're going to start with tell a joke, and then about, or tell a joke about, and then we're going to be creating a parameter. So add part is new template part. And we're going to use an example here. So I'm going to say Miley, and this template part is as alias given, or just first name. That's the alias we give to the parameter, and it has the metadata at sys dot given name. Going to fix my indentation. Okay, so this part is done. Um, we're going to well, actually this whole template is done. So tell a joke about Miley. Oh, we need the last name as well, sorry. So we're going to add a space. We're going to add a space. And then we're going to add new part. It's new template, inted template part. Cyrus. It's alias, well, metadata with meta. It is last name, and the alias, no, and the metadata is at sys last name. And again, you can find all those system parameters on the API page. So what this will do, this is a question, tell a joke about Miley Cyrus, and it will extract the first name and the last name from that question. Now with one template we're having enough, but we're just going to copy it. We're going to change the tell to do. We're going to copy it again. We're going to change the tell to make this time. We're going to change it again, make and then we tell or for example tell a Miley Cyrus joke I want to create. So tell a Miley Cyrus joke, and well, you can create different variations for this as well. But now the templates aren't returned in response yet. So last time we just added with action in the response. Now we're going to add a new parameter. So add parameter, new response parameter. It contains a name and value. So first name, and the value is $, first name. It is required. And these are the prompts. Well, with data type, which is again the system parameter you're going to use, sys given name. And next, well, you can give it default value, but we're not going to do it. We're going to ask for the first name when it's not provided. So if you ask, tell a joke about Cyrus, it will detect Cyrus as the last name but not the first name, so it will ask for the first name. So you can add prompts. So what is the first name? Add another prompt. So you can add as many prompts as you want, and it will choose one randomly. What is the first name? Add prompts. I'm going to make a few. Tell me the first name, please. I'm going to, well, it's good enough. So this parameter is done. We're going to just copy it because we need the same for the last name. So last name. Oh, is that correct? Yes. Change the system parameter last to last name. What is the last name? What is the surname? Tell me the last name, please. So now it will detect the question with the given name and last name. When one of them or both of them are not in your question, like if you just ask tell a joke, it will ask for those first and last name. And I think this is done. Yeah, this is done. So it will upload the intent again. It will override it. And to test the extracting of the parameters, I'm going to well, test for it. So map string params is event.getParameters. Now the action will also be called when your parameters aren't filled yet. So if you have a required parameter like this and it is not filled, and well, it is required, you can just the default response will be something like what is the first name, what is the first name, or what is the last name. So if you detect that the first name is not present in your parameters, you just return the default response. And in all the examples I have online, you will see that I always return get default response when a specific parameters that is required is not in the parameters list. So if not params contains key first name or not params contains key last name, return event get default response. And this is a joke about, I'm just going to use event get params get first name, params get last name. So again, it will check if the parameters are available. If not, it will return the default one. If either one of the parameters is not available, if not, it will return the default response, which is probably the prompt. And if they are available, it will return. This is a joke byte Miley Cyrus with the extracted parameters. So yeah, we're going to compile this and run it and test it. So the server is started, a new intent is uploaded, and as you can see, this is how our new intent looks. So it highlighted Miley Cyrus because apparently we used Miley Cyrus in every template. It is advised to use other names as well, so it knows that you're talking about names. But as you can see, it will detect Miley as the first name, last name being Cyrus. So if I ask, tell a joke about Bill Gates, it will extract Bill as the first name and Gates as the last name. But as you can see, it has no response because the response is handled by our online, it's handled by our module. So I'm going to try this on the server. So if I ask tell a joke about Bill Gates, this is a joke about Bill Gates. Or if I ask tell a joke about well, I don't know, Donald Trump, it will extract the first and last name as well. And well, it's not always good in extracting names. For example, if I use my own name, tell a joke about Maxim Van de Winkel, it will try to extract Van as my last name. Oh, well, it will, I'm not going to use my name because it's a local question that's overriding it. Actually, this looks strange. Bot tell a joke about Maxim Van de Winkel and it returns a Dutch developer. So actually, my bot is saying that I'm the joke. Well, okay. Well, anyway, you'll get what I mean. It will extract parameters. So yeah, this is basic usage of the API. With this, you can create some basic questions, and of course, you can make the get response as advanced as you want, especially with the parameters. In the next episode, I will be going into depth with some entities, and I will give a bit more information about contexts. But next episode will be mainly about entities and some design patterns you should use when uploading intents. So yeah, see you next episode. Bye.